My mother-in-law was in ICU and almost 90. And her mind, at that stage, I really think that if you spend time with people, of course, there's always the wish that we have for people to first not suffer, and second, to last as long as they would, or would will to live. But if you spend time with people who have illnesses or aged, you know that the time will come where they will let go of this physical body. But you never know when that will be. So I went to visit my mother-in-law in the ICU, and she had been very despondent. She had not really opened her eyes in several days, and when she did, it was not for very long, and she didn't want to move. Several times she opened her eyes and asked my wife if she was still alive. Am I dead yet? She would say. So as I was sitting with her and my wife went out to make a phone call, I went over and I touched her on the arm and started stroking her on the arm. And then she went like this with her hand. So I put my hand in her hand. Now, you don't know my mother-in-law, so let me explain a little bit about her. She's a very insightful lady. She has a very good intuition, and she has the unique quality of seeing where your weakness is. And if she sees your weakness, she knows how to give you, in Jewish we say, she gives you a little nudge with a little twinkle in her eye, and lets you know that she knows that you're not so perfect. And if she doesn't like you, oh well, you're in real trouble then. But generally, she likes to give you a little nudge. So I put my hand in her hand and then my fingers, and you know how you do in the hospital, you're not sure if somebody is fully awake or not. So I said, if you can hear me, squeeze my fingers. So she squeezed my finger a little bit. And then I said, oh, you can squeeze it harder. She squeezed a little harder. I said, you can cause me some pain. She squeezed it really hard. And I said, oh, that hurts so good. And she opened her eyes and she started laughing. And ever since then, she's rallying. She's been doing her physical therapy. Yesterday she stood up, she's out of the ICU. See, not possible to change her habit energy, but possible to use it, to access it. So, these mental factors that I should just, I don't have this on a slide, but I should say there are 3 types of formations. Bodily formations, speech formations, and mental formations. The bodily formation, this term is translated by Thanissaro Bhikkhu as fabrications. I like that too, fabrications. So these bodily formation is the breath. This is the habit energy of the body. This is what the body does. Breathes. The habit energy of the speech is called initial speech and then sustained speech, or initial ringing of the storyline in your mind, and then it continues, proliferates on vitaka and vichara in Pali. It's a little bit, for beginning mind, it's a little bit like putting a gong over your head and somebody striking it. And then you just hear it reverberating over and over again. Yes. And the third is mental formations. So mental formations is perception and feeling. So the word in Pali is cheta. Or chitasika. So you see it here in Chinese, sinsho. So these mental factors are described in a text called the Abhidharma. Now I should say a little bit about the Abhidharma. You just notice the word dharma there and not dhamma. So there are three baskets in the Buddhist teaching. Who knows the three baskets? Yes? Vinaya, right? The suttas, right? And the commentary, Abhidhamma, right? Three baskets, right? So the sutta basket is made up of 5 books and subdivided into different parts. The Vinaya, which is the code of ethics, and stories about how the code of ethics, the monastic code, how that came to be, why it came to be. The different stories are in the Vinaya. The code itself called the Patimokkha. And then in the Abhidhamma, this is kind of a psychological, cosmological treatise on the commentary on how this all fits together. So these are called the Tipitaka. Now, in the Mahayana tradition, there is an equivalent for each part. So in the suttas, we have the sutras. So the later sutras that are attributed to the Buddha that were revealed in the 1st century, 3 main groups we can talk about: the Lotus Sutra, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and the Flower Ornament Sutra. And there are also a number of others, Surangama, Vimalakirti. There are a number of other important sutras. Nirvana Sutra, lots of sutras. So that would be the equivalent in the Mahayana tradition. The equivalent to the Vinaya in the Mahayana tradition would be the Bodhisattva path. The Bodhisattva vows and the teachings about how to practice the Bodhisattva path. It's found in the Dasa Bhumi chapter of the Flower Ornament Sutra, and some in the Lotus Sutra, and the Brahmanet Sutra. And then in the Abhidhamma has the equivalent in the Mahayana called the Abhidharma. Kosa would be the first one, written by Vasubandhu. So there are differences between the Abhidharma and the Abhidhamma. In the Abhidhamma, the original system, there were 100, or in some cases, depending upon the school, 75 mental factors. And then in the Abhidharma, the Abhidharma Kosha, which was written by Vasubandhu, it turned into 51 mental factors. And this is called the Yogacara system. So these are sometimes called karmic formations or habituation or mental functions that account for the impulsive craving, the gathering of powers of the formation potential. It's the fourth of the five skandhas, as we learned earlier today. So these 51 mental factors of the Yogacara school are divided into 6 groups. I'm going to divide them into 5 in a moment to make it a little bit easier. And I have the Chinese here, but I'm going to go to this. I'm very grateful to Emily Su, who teaches at a center, a Tibetan Buddhist center in San Francisco. I took her course, wonderful course. After she came out from a 3-year retreat, she gave a series of classes on this topic. So the mental factors divided into 6 groups, but I'm going to divide them into 5 because it's easier. So I'm going to put the primary and the secondary afflictions in one group. So you can think of it as like a hand. We can say the mind is like a hand. And then they have these different mental factors. So the mental factor, which is the thumb finger, which can touch all of the other fingers, we call it the omnipresent mental factors. And these omnipresent mental factors are happening all the time in our consciousness, in our mind. And then I'm going to talk about the object ascertaining mental factor, which is this finger here. This is the finger that we use to apprehend the objects from our environment. Sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not so voluntarily. You probably all felt the difference of meditating outside, where there were lots of different distractions than meditating in the hall. Times we don't control very well where the object ascertaining takes place until we learn, as the master says, how to have our training be the boss rather than our wandering mind. So we're going to start with the omnipresent mental factors, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and the object ascertaining mental factors, and that's as far as I will get. So I have the Chinese here for anyone who wants the Chinese. So the contact that's, of course, remember, Master said that's the beginning place of the consciousness, where we know something. So the sense organs, they contact to something, and this is always happening. If you don't have any contact, then there's no mental factors that we can access. We have to then go to much deeper in the mind, back all the way before consciousness, to have contact with the mental factors at that level. But here, where contact takes place, feeling arises. And when we have contact with something, when we feel it in 3 ways. One of 3 ways, or well, either we find it pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And sometimes it's very subtle. We have to build up a number of different contacts before sometimes it reaches our awareness, but the contact is happening nonetheless. And the feeling is happening, but we may not be aware of it. then suddenly the feeling arises, and by that time maybe the feeling is so strong that it takes us over. We get really taken away by it. We're not aware. Suddenly, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this feeling. By the time the feeling is that strong, it's usually going to lead to the next step in the chain. It's going to lead to some kind of craving. Either I want it or I don't want it, or I don't care about it. Those are the three choices that happen at the next level. When the feeling is very strong, that connection to the craving, I want it, I don't want it, I don't care about it, is so powerful that it's very difficult to prevent that from taking place. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. We have to use restraint at that point. But if we can catch the feeling early enough and see that feeling for what it is, just a feeling. It's impermanent, possibly unsatisfactory, since most things are. Not take it personally. Then we can break the link between the feeling and the storytelling that happens next. This sanya, this discriminative thinking that says, I like this, I don't like that. I want this, I don't want that. And it's all about me. It's what I want. So this kind of discriminative thinking that takes place at that next level then leads to what we call our intention and attention. So it's possible that we might have a feeling that would be a wholesome feeling, and we notice it. We say, oh, this is a wholesome feeling. I want to express my loving kindness towards someone who has helped me, or help someone that I love, or help someone I can see that they are in need of loving kindness, a little touch. So I have that feeling. And then, instead of a discrimination that's dualistic, I feel a connection to that person. And then my intention and my attention are able to come together, focused, and now my energy level is connected. So when a person has this kind of contact feeling, discrimination, which is a wholesome one, and leads to an intention and attention that's connected, then the person does not have any leak in their energy system. Their energy level is not a problem, because their intention and attention are not going in separate directions, and they can accomplish things that we might look at and say, oh, didn't know that I could do that, or that person could do that. Because the intention and attention are together. So this is the purpose of understanding our practice. When we practice in our meditation, as you'll see in a moment, how that fits in, we're trying to lead our mind into being able to see what we're contacting, what kinds of feelings we're having, and how it is that we can connect with our thoughts and feelings in such a way that we can bring our intention and attention together in a wholesome way, unified, not separate. Which then brings us to the next division of mental factors called the object ascertaining mental factors, our pointing finger. My secretary, Sarah, has a little baby. He was spent the first 5.5 months in my office while she cared for him. And so I became the grand boss. Then he goes to daycare, but he comes to visit. Now he's 16 months, but starting at about a year old, he would see something, he would point his finger at it. That's when pointing starts, about a year old. Object ascertaining. The mind now is ascertaining the object. So how does this happen? Well, the intention and the attention come together and the person has an aspiration. So this aspiration, neither positive nor negative, it's just an aspiration. The aspiration quality has to do with whether it's wholesome or unwholesome from the object, from the omnipresent mental factor, or from the virtuous or non-virtuous afflictions. So the aspiration, this is the inclination towards something. This is my purpose, this is my goal, this is what I want to know about. So he points his finger, the little fellow. What is that? Although he can't say what is that. Or let me show you that. Or I see you. Or I want that. So the little person does this without words. The aspiration is already there before the words are there. And then there is this determination that takes place. Here the word is belief, but better translation of this word is determination. I can do it. I'm going to work at this and I'm going to do it. I want to put the effort into it. And that leads to our mindfulness practice. Now we put our mind to it. So here in this practice, we're putting our mind to our mindfulness. We're being mindful of being mindful. That's what we really are practicing here. Oh, by the way, Master, I asked him to put up 2 gates on either side of the road, so we'll be here for the next 9 days. This mindfulness, very, very important. We developed a mindfulness of mindfulness. We really can put our energy into mindfulness of the body and mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, mindfulness of phenomenon. We can practice this in such a way that we strengthen our determination and our aspiration, and we are able to connect our object ascertaining mental factor. See, it's not heading outward, it's heading inward, and it's connecting now to the omnipresent mental factor, and we end up okay. Mental stabilization then takes place, and wisdom arises as a result. So this is the importance of being able to detect our feeling, if possible, even in between our contact and our craving. Once it becomes craving, we can still stop it. But it's more difficult. If we can notice it in the feeling stage, if we can root it in our physical practice, in our body, we can feel it in our body, we can connect it to the 4 elements, perhaps. Am I feeling something solid? Am I feeling something more liquid, fluid flowing? Maybe sometimes the fluid flowing energy is very, very strong, and fear happens as a result. Sometimes the fluid energy is very low, and we get very tired, no energy. Mental energy is dehydrated. And we notice these things about whether we have lots of good heat energy, or whether our heat energy is so strong we become angry, or whether our heat energy is too low, like my mother-in-law laying there not able to move, no energy. Or the air, we feel our vitality and interconnectedness with our body. We feel the joyfulness that comes, the understanding of preciousness that comes from our simple act of respiration. We don't need any other form of entertainment. We know our path is to practice so that we can really attain what we call the true happiness. Well, these are just a few thoughts that I share with you.